welcome back all the participants who have joined. And uh, in this is the eighth session, and we are more or less inching towards the completion of the course. Last session, we discussed about building training strategy, and uh, training strategy happens to be a very important topic, particularly for those who are doing, this diploma this is primarily because primarily is the focus on training and development. And you as a training manager or training head, you may be asked to formulate a training strategy for the company. So I think this training strategy is definitely a very important topic in this respect. So let's recap what we did last time. And I think in the meanwhile, some more people would also join. So we looked at the building training strategy in this fashion. The first thing which we start, in fact, we start any functional strategy, whether it's HRD strategy or it's a training strategy or it's a marketing or whatever. We always start with the what is the company's purpose, what is the company's strategy, business strategy, what is the competitive advantage, and that's why we try to understand about the company first. The company strategy is really is the most important starting point of this. And based on that, the first thing which we identify is the strategic business objectives. What exactly we want to achieve from, by running the business here. What are the strategic business objectives? We look at our hard goals. We look at hard goals like profit, revenue, productivity, and things like that. That these are hard objectives. And we also look at our soft objectives. That means how customer is finding us, and what are the brand this thing, what is the culture in our organization. So there could be both hard objective or the soft objective. So we identify what are the strategic business objective. That means what are those objectives that help us in meeting the organizational company's goals. And based on that, we define the performance results which are necessary to achieve them. That means what are those business results which we should be looking at, and which will help us in achieving our business objectives. For example, we might look at if our business objective, strategic business objective is increase revenue, increase sales, then we might look at the results of, we might look at higher sales. We have to achieve the higher sales. Similarly, if we want, our objective is customer experience, good customer experience, then that can only be achieved if we have less and less of customer complaints. So that is the next step we should be able to look at. Now, third one is there. Third one is for these results, higher sales or lower customer complaints, what are the roles and tasks which are what are the roles which are there which will help us determine the competency of our people who can achieve these goals. So, for example, if we look at higher sales as our performance result, and lower customer complaints as our this thing, we may be able to look at the salespeople. The salespeople are the ones who are going to increase the sales. And then we look at what is the competency area of the sales which will help us in increasing sales. So, for example, in sales, let's say, what is the quality of the customer contact calls? When they contact the customer, what is the first time when they contact the customer, what is the quality of that sales call? So that could be one of them, and that will determine, in case that is not up to the mark, that will give you an idea about that this is the where training could be the input which we can give to the sales people. Or let's say, if you will look at the customer complaints, lower customer complaints, then we also start looking at that what is our support team which gets involved uh, into the customer complaints. The support team, how do they use their knowledge of online platform to better assist customer resolve their queries which they are in. So that is so that way we identify which departments, which task is supposed to be required, and look at the competency. And once we know that these are this thing, then we look at the gap between the what is required to be done and what is the gap of the existing people. And that means that gives us the training needs. But it's important that we should communicate these goals, like supposing we say first call has to be improved, or the support teams knowledge, awareness, or utilization of the various platforms to resolve the queries have to be improved. Now, these things must be informed to the concerned people. So, because employees are the key stakeholders for the training function. So they have not been involved in the above four steps. So they should not get a surprise that we are supposed to be trained on this thing. So they should be employees really, they do not share the same understanding as the training people who have done this work. So they must be involved into the, they must be communicated about our training this thing. So after after the training needs have been identified, then we can probably look at the how do we fulfill that particular need. But the training strategy means that we just don't simply offer MDPs. You know, one should not think that the training department's function is to offer MDP. If the training inputs are not aligned to the business strategy, that will involve a lot of cost. The cost of misalignment with the business strategy could be very high. According to one survey, 12% of employees feel that they can apply this. They can only 12% can apply the skills they have learned from training to their jobs. That means this has not been really appropriate. And similarly, 67% of business fail to execute well. That means they have not been very well trained. So I mean, my point is that it is critical that the training strategy is aligned to the business strategy. Okay?
So MDP is the management development programs?
Management development programs. Okay. A number of training functions, the training people, they sometimes feel, okay, let us do some well-known, good, popular MDPs. Yeah? Like, so they try to include them in their training calendar and keep on running those programs. So, but if that is not aligned to the business strategy, the effectiveness of these MDPs, management development programs, will not be very good. Okay, right. So that's a which I was trying to make it. Now, remember this. Let's recap this training strategy, this diagram which we discussed in the last session. So we identify training needs, as I mentioned, that we identify training needs, and it always comes out that when we do the training needs, we look at the three aspects: organizational needs, group needs, and individual needs, and we come up with a large number of training needs. Okay, so and how do we assess training needs? Training needs can be assessed. We didn't talk much about this in the last session, but based on these 3-4 ways: structured interviews. What happens is the training manager or training head he sits down with the departmental heads, various other function department heads, and discuss about where do they think are the performance gaps. Because each departmental head is expected to know how his department is behaving, what is the performance of his department, and if the performance is not up to the mark, what could be uh, the reasons, and he can share with the training head, and they jointly can come out with that we should focus on these training needs. So that is one way, and which normally is done. So there is a training manager, the training head has a sort of a workshop or one-to-one interview with different departmental heads to get a feel of and involve the other departmental heads into the identification of training needs. So that is a very important way of it. And normally departmental heads also, they identify training needs of the various people in the department based on the critical incident techniques. If something happened and a person did not do very well or not perform very well, so that probably will highlight what is his training needs. Performance rating, which normally in performance appraisal, we get the inputs even for the self-appraisal, wherever it is done, people are expected to give their own training and developmental needs. So that could be one of the basis of identifying. There is another important tool, management tool, which is called balance scorecard. I don't know how many of you are quite familiar with this balance scorecards. Are you aware of this?
So just heard the name,
No,
sir.
sir.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
No. So I think let's briefly touch upon, because this is supposed to be a very important management tool, and it has been this was developed by Dr. Kaplan and Dr. David Norton way back in early 1990s. So it is all more than 25 years old, this one. And there what these two people looked at, they said that organization performance cannot just be measured by the financial performance. If you want to look at the organization performance, there are different other perspectives besides the financial perspective. Mostly people talk about the organization performance in terms of revenue and profit and so on. He says that these are important, that's no doubt about that. However, there are some other parameters also. So they look beyond the financial parameters and identified three more. So it is definitely something which balance scorecard, which is a which looks at four different perspectives, not just the financial perspective, and that is the one which can measure its health, the health of the organization. And each of these perspectives focuses on different side of the company, and that's why this is called a balanced view. So that's why it's called balanced scorecard. So if you look at this balanced scorecard, there are three other perspectives besides the financial. The one is customer, internal business processes, and learning and growth. So what these people suggested, that if we look at all the four aspects, like financial means to succeed financially, how should we appear to our stakeholders? That is a financial. That means what other stakeholders would require higher revenue and more profit, and that's one. If you look at the customer focus, with this customer focus means to achieve our vision, how should we appear to our customers? How do customers perceive us? And that's important for financial, for in fact the health of the organization. Third is internal business processes. That means to satisfy our shareholders, our stakeholders and customers, what businesses processes we must excel at. We should look at our internal business processes. What are those which are supposed to be done excellently well? And finally, the learning and growth, which asks to achieve our vision, how will we sustain our ability to change and improve? What is supposed to be done in order to change and improve? So that's the other perspective. So if you look at all these four perspectives together, then that's a balanced way of looking at it. Let's look a little more in detail
Sir,
of these.
a little clarification I would seek here.
Yeah.
For the financial, okay, stakeholders can okay, give the they can assess the health of the organization. Customers can give their perspective regarding from their viewpoint. How do we analyze the internal processes and the learning and development? Because there is no outside to analyze.
Now let me go through one by one each of these four. Okay, then probably it will be clearer. Let's look at the learning and growth first. Okay, learning and growth means this perspective is really looks at the culture of the organization, and that means that what is it that are the employees? Is it easy for the employees to collaborate and share knowledge, or is it mess of bureaucracy? Does anyone have access to training and continuing education opportunity? Are we able to train our people? The programs which we are doing in the organization, will they improve our competitive differentiators? Will they improve our key competencies, which are study competencies, or will it improve our? So that means it looks at various things. And in fact, the technology today is playing a major role. And are we able to use these latest devices or something? So this really looks at the our internal softer aspects. Softer aspects means our culture, our ability to improve, our ability to learn and improve. So that is where the learning and growth is there. If you look at the internal business processes, and your question was regarding that, internal business processes really is that how efficiently our business is running. It's about reducing waste, speed up things, doing more with less. Efficiency really means that we get the more output from less inputs, doing more with less. So are there any obstacles standing between new ideas and execution? How quickly can we adopt to changing business conditions? So this is talking about all the internal business processes. Internal business processes means entire thing in the value chain. So in the value chain, there are a number of, for each activity, we have certain processes, and it's looking at that. So this is a detailed exercise as far as business process is concerned. Is that clear?
So my question was that how do we, it's okay, this is the format for analysis, like finance of the financial health, okay, can be known through the shares of the company, through the, from the share value. And of course, from the customer's viewpoint, the customers can, their preferences and their loyalty to the company can be a way to assess. But then how do we assess and gauge gauge the internal processes and the learning and growth? I mean, what could be
another connected question with this is, who would be the internal business analysis? Who would be analyzing this internal business process? Because it is going to span across the departments.
Yeah. So very right said, it is the departmental heads who are responsible for internal business processes. So they will be involved in their in assessing their own business processes.
That's what I wanted to understand. So who is the person who would give the assessment?
Each department.
Again, sir, just to supplement what Debay is asking, it will exactly become typically like a government function. Every department department is supposed to analyze what is going wrong in the department, but everyone feels that because he's a part of the organization or the department is doing everything correctly. There's nothing that can happen. That is how the government processes never end up changing. And that is how that lethargy or that thing sets, entropy sets in the processes.
Now let's look at only one department just to understand the point. Supposing we look at HR department. Okay? You may be quite familiar. Now, HR department has number of activities. It has got talent acquisition activity. It has got the performance measurement activity. It has got customer service or employee service activities and all that. Now, one can look at all these activities and see whether these activities are performing to the best of this thing. And if they are not performing, if there is if you are not getting the right results, if you're not getting the right person at the right time, that means your acquisition, talent acquisition activity needs to be fine-tuned, needs to be changed. So that's how, similarly, in all the other functions also, they are departments can look at the key activities and look at how is there any need for improvement in expertise. So that's how internal business processes are there. It is not, and when they discuss it with the training manager, they would be able to give these inputs to the training manager in order to incorporate training needs. Is that clear? Is that
Sir, are there any measures or metrics to find out this? Like in terms of finance, okay, it's a share value can give an assessment of the company's health. Customer loyalty can to an extent know, I mean, how popular your brand is or how well you're doing can be known from there. But how can you, what is the measure or metrics for learning or for internal business process?
If you are, let's say, Azim, going back to the same example of the HR, if you are responsible for the talent acquisition, then you have the metrics which can determine how your talent acquisition process can be measured. For example, it could be the cost of acquisition of talent. That will be calculated, and they could be the time taken for getting the person into the organization. It could be also the how much what the person's quality, at what the person, how good or how scarce, what is the compensation which you have been able to so what is ultimately recurring cost. So these are the metrics which normally are used for each activity. And in fact, if you are a manager for talent acquisition, your KRAs, key result areas, will indicate all the metrics, because there are good number of them which are measurable, and that's where the metrics for each of these activities taken into.
That means that at the end of the year, for making a balanced scorecard, each department KRAs of the employees are grouped together to have what is the outcome of that department.
Balanced scorecard is primarily for an organization as a whole. Now, if in this, that means that each of these core components, they are then become part of the balanced scorecard. And for each component, then there are matrices for each of these. And that's how, if you go the return way, starting from the each employee's performance, you integrate it into the organization on the departmental's performance, and from the department's performance you come back to the organization performance. It may happen that all the other departmental internal processes are working very well, but still the financial performance is not good. Then that's where the question arises: what could be the reason for that? So balanced scorecard is definitely a measure for identifying a organization with respect to 4 key parameters and the other ones.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go down to the customer. Customer is primarily, it is about how are you getting more and more customers, new customers? Are you winning the new businesses? How about keeping your customers happy? Is the satisfaction level good or not? So that's how its metrics could be worked out. And it is definitely a very important perspective, because customer is key, and without this, I think we will probably have a problem in the future. Financial is something which all of you know, and this is the important aspect of the this thing, and how are we making money, are we making profit, are shareholders happy, and so on. So these are the four uh, uh, perspective of the balanced scorecard, and it's important that the training manager should understand not just the financial parameters, but all different aspects in order to make this thing. So coming back to our same training strategy, we have been able to now identify the training needs, and from these training needs, we classify using certain training characteristics. We discussed about it last time, and we work out the various categories of training. And from these categories, we work out exactly what are the activity training plan. Training, and that training plan is something which then we organize and start implementing. It has different components, training resources, training, what are the players and formats, and so on. We also discussed last time that there could be different approaches for training in companies. And we discussed about two approaches. One, of course, was the stable organization, a traditional way of looking at training, where we train individual persons who gets trained either by the managers, their supervisors, or by the trainers. And this could be, he may be sent to off-the-job training somewhere else in a particular training program, which has been planned for him. And that is a formal training program which he undergoes, and he probably has to undergo a number of such training programs, and which are required for fulfilling his job. So it emanates from the job specification. What are the thing, and based on that, he attends training program, and then when he comes back to their work, he transfers all the training to the work. So that is a traditional way of doing, looking at training and all that. There's another way which we discussed last time, which is based on agility. And so some companies, they do all these things which are there in the first column. However, they also do number of other things. That means training is not only learning is not only done by individuals. They learn, number of individuals learn together, and they learn from each other. And we discussed that little more detail. And this learning takes place on the job. It is not that he's going. It's informal. It's employee driven, because the person himself, based on a curiosity and based on problems which is facing on the job, that it emanates and actually. So this is employee driven, and it could be a short cycle. And he keeps on working at the same time. He keeps on learning from various sources. So this work, there's no question of learning getting transferred to work, because he's learning while working. So that happens together simultaneously. Okay. So this is something which so in fact, if you see, and we should be very conscious about this thing, that this is a new normal emerging, particularly in the COVID era, that we are, most of the people, 95% people are from home, and this traditional lines, work-life segmentation is getting blurred, more and more blurred. And number of people, they feel that working on home is quite successful, and people are prefer. number of companies are therefore today evaluating work from home vis-a-vis the normal physical classroom training. They evaluate work from home costs versus reduced real estate costs, having the physical infrastructure, and uh, and how you can enhance the work-life integration. So those people who are learning and while working at home, that means learning while working, they may find that learning is as natural as breathing. That means it's happening. In fact, this is the continuous learning. Continuous learning happens when you are working as well as learning. And while the segmenters who do not put it together, they could be some. So today, HR strategy, training strategy, they need to be reviewed, and organizations are working towards revised training and HR strategy, where organization structure is evolving to be a web of networks, where learning and working happen simultaneously. So this is there. And we also last time
So
looked at the
sir, can I
yeah
interrupt? Sir, can you give an
yeah.
example of the integrators and the segmenters?
Integrators are those. I mean, again, integrators are. If you look at the previous slide, integrators are those who are doing in the agile way, which the second integrates. So that means you are integrating work and learn same. So a good number of people do it, and that's where. But when you are doing it together, you are able to become much more successful in learning, and then successful in your performance. So that is the one. That's where I want talking about the integrators. Okay, and most of the people they do this thing because today our environment, we have huge number of learning resources available to us, because we have and that's where I think the learning continuously takes place. While there could be a number of other training resources, learning resources which are outside the organization, but then we we have access to them, very readily access to them, and that's where we keep on using it. So that this is something which is important today, and this has happened not just because of the COVID, but these technology has made all these various resources uh, readily accessible. Uh, for use it as and when we feel the need of that. Virtual training, which is an important concept now, and I think that all training strategies must be in future will include the virtual classes. This thing, and the advantage of this is, of course, anywhere you can have training and at any time, whatever. So there's a lot of flexibility in this. You can, and if even if you want to change, the organization wants to change the training content and all that, they can update the module. Very simple, cost-effective way of changing the virtual training courses. So you have, as an employee, you have access to this very readily. It is definitely a good return on investment because it's highly cost-effective. And the traditional training. It reduces travel expenses, reduces expenses on the real estate, training learning material, training venues, all these things is done. So which one should we use then, virtual training or the classroom training? Well, we probably will use a combination of them. We cannot just go on virtual training. We may have to have a classroom training as well. So that is the way the training strategy today will have to change completely from the. Okay. So this is then that means when we do training operations, and we also have been able to organize all our resources the next step happens to be the implementation. So this is the part. Then we come up to our session of implementation, implementing strategy. Implementing strategy is an important aspect of this strategy formulation, whether it is a business strategy or it's a functional strategy, whether it's a strategy or it's a training strategy. As we discussed, that all strategies, they are just a piece of paper. They are ideas, they are concepts only, they are theory only, unless they are converted into results. So, and the process of converting those strategies or idea or theory, whatever, is that implementing strategy is a key task in any organization. They say, you must have heard that for success, inspiration is 10% or perspiration is 90%. That means if you have to struggle, you have to really sweat it out. Inspiration is important for success, but it's really converting that inspiration into the results. Same thing happens here. So formulation of strategy is 10%, while 10% attributable success, you can attribute to success. However, 90% is the implementation. So we're going to discuss in the remaining part of the session how do we implement. Okay, now we have been looking at in the major part of the course as a business strategy, right? Now, business strategy, and we discussed that in our first few sessions, that it's important to have long-term, simple vision and objectives and all that. We also looked at how do we look at the external environment. So the competitive environment, we study that, we analyze that, and we identify opportunities in the environment to do our business. We also look at the threats in the environment, that where we should be careful, how we should. And then also we looked at our resources, looked at internal environment. Internal environment works that we objectively appraise the resources available to us, all the resources. And based on that, based on these three, we work out what is the competitive advantage, what are the strategy which we follow, and this strategy is supposed to be this thing. So now, important, the business strategy means we identify what is going to be our competitive advantage, and for that competitive advantage, what should we do? What are the choices to do business? That's whether we should do a cost leadership, we should reduce the cost of our products and services, or we should move towards differentiation, should have a unique product and unique services. These are all part of the business strategy which we discussed. However, when we have the effective implementation of that business strategy, then we get the successful business strategy. So our effective implementation is the key portion, key in our strategy. Now, how do we implement this strategy? Implementing a strategy is primarily action oriented, because formulation of the strategy is done identifying the it's a market oriented or finance oriented. Look at some of those parameters, customer oriented. However, implementing strategy is action oriented. We make things happen, and here the management really move forwards in various steps. Number of obstacles come on the way, so we overcome those obstacles and reach the destination. So this is a much more hands-on, action-oriented work, much more tougher. It's highly tougher, much more time-consuming than formulating strategy. formulating strategy is sitting in a, in a room. We can do a number of things, but here, when we're implementing strategy, we have to go out of the field, and it's more tougher and time consuming. Why is it tougher? This is tougher because number of reasons. Any questions? Okay. Each strategy, when we execute, it involves certain change in the organization. And with the change, there is resistance. And overcoming resistance, as you know, is tough. So this is where the toughness comes, toughness of execution of strategy starts. So every time a strategy is implemented, there is some change in the status quo. And there are large number of people who are there in the organization, and everybody is not aligned to that strategy. Maybe they don't understand strategy that much, or some of them, and based on some survey, it says only about 50-60% are of people, they are along with the change which we are, along with the strategy which we are trying to execute. There are always 20-30% people who are not with the change. There are 10% people who oppose the change, oppose the strategy. No, this doesn't work. No, this will not work. And they are always opposed. So there are in the organization a number of people who are, small component, but 10% people or something who oppose, or then 20-30 people who are sitting on the fence. They are not really supporting the change. So that's one reason why executing a strategy is tough. Then there are large number of activities to be performed. And each activity can be handled in number of ways. And there could be number of obstacles that will come on the way. So that's where the difficulty and toughness of the process is there. So it requires, by the management, it requires that large number of initiatives should be taken up simultaneously, and then integrating the efforts of different groups becomes a tough task. That's why this executing strategy is a really tough call. By the way, you know that who formulates the strategy? A strategy is normally formulated by whom? Can you guess? Who formulates this?
Management. Top management.
Top management.
By top management.
Top management is basically responsible for the formulation. They do get inputs from the lower level, middle management, lower management, but based on the input received from middle and lower management, they are the ones who are responsible for formulating a strategy, whether there are functional strategies or then there are organization strategies. So that's, but when it comes to implementation of the strategy is done by the entire management team. All the employees get involved. Okay, it's not just the top management. Senior management, of course, lead. They lead the process. They lead the process, but they rely on the cooperation of. Okay, they are able to, if they can perform their jobs properly, then strategy can be executed very, very nicely. So you have to involve everybody in the implementation of strategy. Now, each organization has got a specific strategy to be implemented, and each specific strategy will require some specific implementation steps. Okay, so every implementing the way we implement strategy for each organization will have to be customized for that particular organization. Like, for example, if your strategy happens to be cost leadership, then you have strategy implementation way of certain steps. But if your strategy is differentiation strategy, those steps will have to be considerably different from the previous other organization, which is following the cost leadership strategy. So that means that each organization will have very different kind of implementing steps for implementing this strategy. So it is that means it is going to depend on the how that organization strategy is, and based on that the implementation of strategy will be worked out by each organization. However, there have been certain studies, and there are certain certain common elements in the implementation of the strategy, which can be seen in all successful implementation studies. So there are 7 common elements, common steps, common components, which you will find in all successful implementation of the strategy. So we should be quite aware of that, because in our implementation of strategy, in our organization, we must ensure that these 7 components are available in that. So we are going to discuss now these 7 elements which are generic, which will be applicable to all strategy implementation process. Okay, so these 7 elements happen to be building a capable organization, and second is allocating resources to strategy critical activities, establishing strategy supportive policies and systems, installing operating and information systems, rewarding people to execute their strategy well, creating a strategy supportive culture, and finally, exerting the inspiring leadership. So we'll go through each of these to understand these components. But what is important here is that if any of these, and some of these components could be quite related also, but if any of these components is missing, then that means strategy implementation is not very well and may not lead to your success. So let's go one by one. So first one is building a capable organization and select the change agents. Now, that means that we have the first step happens to be when we do the implementation strategy, that we have a capable organization for strategy execution. That means capable organization means that it should be staffed very nicely. It should have all the core competencies and competitive abilities, and it should have a good organization structure. So here I identifying here the key elements. You have to equip your organization with the people, good number of people, and they should be competent and capable people. Third is that we have to ensure that the organization structure is aligned to the strategy which we are following. So HR strategy probably have to have an important role to play in this particular element. HR strategy should focus that we have appropriate people have been acquired for the organization, and the organization structure probably is, you have to see that organization structure is really aligned to the strategy which we are using.
Sir, can you please elaborate matching the organization structure to the, that was the last point?
Is organization structure
to the strategy. Yeah, any way of example this can be explained?
Yes. For example, if you have, let's say, 2 functions which are critical for your strategy. One is that your operations is critical to your strategy, as well as supposing engineering, that means new design, new processes, these two are critical to the strategy. In that case, and then you have number of products as well. So you have multiple products. Supposing your organization is like that, you have multiple products and you have two key distinct. Here, probably a simple functional structure will not be able to work, and you may have to have a matrix organization. And matrix organization means that you have to make an organization which could be a product wise if there are multiple products, and these products will also require engineering as well as operation. So engineering could also be done in a matrix way. So I mean, we didn't discuss too much of the organizational structure. There are a number of different organizational structure. For example, could be a simple functional organizational structure. It should be, or it could be a multi-divisional organizational structure. It could be a matrix organizational structure, and so on. Now, what you need to see is the strategy which you are implementing, which structure is the most appropriate for that. And in your present organizational structure, you'll have to bring in those changes. You have to bring in those changes in order to make the organizational structure which is conducive to the strategy, which is can be. So this is where I meant that, and this is normally is done, of course, by the top management, but HR input, HR strategy will, HR people will play important role in this thing. And because of that organizational structure change, number of people probably will have to be moved from one function to another. One is part of this structure to another part of structure. Again, HR comes into the way. So that's where I mean. And second, of course, staffing the organization means that you got to get the people, right people and all that for doing various roles which are required by this thing. So this is where I meant that organizational structure should be suited to this strategy. Every time you change the strategy, you will also have to look at the organization structure, whether this is going to work there in that or not. Okay.
So adding to the point, matching the organization structure to strategy, I also have a question that will the reporting structure also be related to this, that kind of hierarchy we follow?
Of course, reporting relationship gets changed because if there is a change in organizational structure.
Yes.
If the organizational structure gets changed.
So in organization structure, we mean with the hierarchy? What does it mean? I mean, organization structure would mean the hierarchy levels.
Yeah, organizational structure really means two things, primarily two things. One is how different functions in the organizations are connected to the each other. Are they connected or they are in the different silos? Like functional structure, very functional structure. If you remember, you have a general manager or CEO at the top, and then we have a VP HR, VP finance, VP this thing, and this is a functional structure. Functional structure means that each department directly reports to the CEO. This is a simple functional structure. However, in a divisional structure, it could be, let's say, supposing you have, okay, another example I can give you. If you have two products, you have one CEO, we have two vice presidents responsible for each of these products. Okay, so this is a product-based structure, and each product general manager, let's say product head, has got the entire value chain activities in terms of HR, finance, operations, and so on and so forth, marketing and all that under him. That means two sets of product chiefs have their own organization. That is one kind of structure. Second kind of structure is that you have a CEO, he has got 5 different functions, functional head, HR, finance, marketing, materials, and so on. And under each of these, there is a product 1 and product 2. That means the marketing is having 2 DGMs One looking after product A marketing, second look after product B. So there are two different organization structure. And as soon as you have a two different organization structure, your reporting also changes. You are in the first one where the entire functions is together, looking after two products, there people are reporting to ultimately to the functional head. In second one, ultimately they're reporting to product head. So that's one aspect of the organization. Second aspect of the organization structure is what is the delegation of authority, and that shows the how much each layer of the organization, how much authority they have, what kind of decisions they can take without going back to their bosses. So these are 2-3 aspects of the organizational structure which needs to be done. So organizational structure is a separate subject altogether. And
Yeah.
but here the idea was this, that if you are implementing strategy, you may have to match your organizational structure to this strategy. Then only you're going to have a capable business, capable organization. So that was the point which I wanted to make. Now, putting together a strong management team, that is an important aspect. Unless you have a strong management team in the organization, your strategy execution is going to falter. So here, the right people to fit each slot. And here I'm quoting one great author, Jim Collins. He wrote a book, Good to Great. Some of you may have seen his book. He was one of the bestsellers. And what he's mentioned, I mean, he discusses in the book how the good organization can become great organization. Because good organizations are plenty in number, however, great organizations are few. But how, and he says that get the right people on the bus and wrong people off the bus. So he highlighted the importance of having the right people in the organization. So when the organization is, he considers organization as a bus, if the organization is going to its destination, a bus is going to its destination, you should have right people on the bus. He goes to the extent of saying that, and wrong people off the bus. That means if there are wrong people in the organization, please remove them from the bus. It may or may not be possible for each of our organization. We may have a good number of wrong people also. But in fact, this is a guy, Jim Collins said that people are not your most valuable asset. How many of you agree with Jim Collins? People are not your most valuable assets. Any HR people in the participants? What's your response? Do you agree? Or?
So I think people are valuable assets.
People are valuable, but then what is? I think most of us will.
I mean, human capital is important because that is the only thing which you can adapt with the changing times and trends.
There may be certain organizations and processes where the human capital is peripheral to the way the functions are performed. So it has to be seen. It's not an absolute statement. It has to be seen in the correct context.
Name one organization where human resource or human capital is peripheral. Can you name any organization?
So there would be probably technological.
Yeah, very few, very few.
Few technological organizations where it would be peripheral.
But in the technological also, the human resource which work on the technology, they are the greater. So I think what he says was, I mean, let us know. He says, people are not your most valuable assets, but talent is your most valuable asset. And that there everybody agrees that talent is something which is more. So critical mass of talent manager.
So, but the talent can be developed.
Yeah. So that's why I think if you're some assets, and in fact, you know what is the difference? But somebody just now said human capital. What is the difference between human resource and human capital? Is there a difference?
So,
Why?
so a capitalist who is ready made, actually, maybe he is
Sir,
for the company at the moment.
capital is also a resource. So human beings can be taken as resources also, and they can be even categorized as capital. I mean, because that's one of your asset, you know. For
Capital is something that can be grown, just like talent.
Yeah, somebody explains it this way, that resource is something, you have a lot of resources in the organization, resources with the use of resources, it gets depleted. Human resource is something which does not get depleted. It in fact becomes sometimes more valuable. So human capital, he says, is the right terminology for the employees in the organization. Human resource, when you say that human resource gets depreciated. So he normally uses human capital. But I think in general, we all consider the human resource as the same thing as human capital. But human capital is the right terminology to be used for the employees, because normally the employees, they become more and more valuable with experience, with development, and so on and so forth. And therefore, our resources normally deplete. So that is the way this thing. So anyway, so idea is here in the strategic execution context that we must have a critical mass. That means critical mass means a good number of people, of talented managers who will work as the change agents. As I said, each strategy requires the status quo to be changed. And you must have, and no leader can do it on his own. He has to have a support of a critical mass of talented managers. So whenever you as a leader is executing any strategy, make sure that you have a set of people with you who are talented and who are going to become your change agent. That means your key people in your strategy implementation. That's important. Okay, now second thing, which again it's more relevant to our training strategy, is that building core competencies. So this is the second point which I was mentioning, that when you want to have a capable organization to implement this strategy, this is a second most important point, is that building core competencies and competitive capabilities. And normally when we develop our strategy, when we formulate our strategy, we bank on what capabilities and competencies we have. Remember that internal environment, we start seeing our own resources, our own competency and capability. Based on this, we develop the strategy. So this is the step. But then when we do the execution, we have to not only those competencies and capabilities which we have to put them into action. We need to upgrade them as required from time to time. And we have to also modify them as the market conditions change. So that means a good strategy execution requires that all those competencies which you use for formulation of strategy and which you identified that time, now they have to put in action. They have to be upgraded as we required, and that's whether your training inputs, training strategy will come into force, and modify them as market conditions evolve. So this is something which is to be done. Some of the examples I can give you what are strategic relevant competencies. One, for example, if your strategy happens to be the cost leadership, superior cost cutting skills is your relevant competency. If your good product, good quality product, the better manufacturing know-how. If you're trying to come at differentiation, new products, new products, product development becomes your key skill. Is speed to new products to the market becomes your key skills. If your after sales service, if your customer service is supposed to be the key basis on which you base your strategy, then that becomes so. This saw faster response, superior inventory management, and so on. So these are the relevant, strategically relevant competencies, and they should be focus of your trading plan and training strategy. The training strategy has to focus really on building the strategic relevant. Okay. Now, this is the first step. We talked about building a capable organization, and we have 6 more to go. But I think I will stop at this point. We will, in the next session, we'll discuss in detail on all these 6, remaining 6. They are very, very critical, very important. We should understand that. But at this point, I'll stop and take questions on what we discussed today. Yeah. Any questions so far?
So what is the relevancy of balance scorecard?
Oh, again, balance scorecard is, see, for an organization, for a stable organization which is doing fairly well, they want to grow in size and performance. And so the only way a new startup probably has a lot of focus on financial results. And so that's where, and the customer maybe. So that is the one. But when you are a little mature organization, you have to look at your organization to reach the higher level of excellence in this thing from various different perspectives. And balance scorecard is one tool which shows you that your organization is performing like this from the shareholder or from stakeholders point of view, which is a financial, customer's point of view, which is customer this thing, and internal processor point of view, and as well as are you becoming capable in growing and improving yourself. That is learning and growth. So it's a balanced view of looking at your organization. So it is not sufficient normally that if you only look at financial performance filter and keep on improving the financial performance only, because you will come.
Because sir, yes.
As a concept.
Because sir, if we.
Yeah, okay, tell me.
Because sir, if we understand the current situation, likewise companies are doing moreover they're focusing on the business aspect, and they're trying to become on track instead of L&D department. So could be difficult to match and keeping a balancing between all other factors. So it might be changed as per the environmental changes.
Of course, I mean, you may, after doing the balance scorecards assessment, you may focus a lot more on the one which is important at that point of time. Like, for example, with the COVID, all these organizations, all these companies are having a lot of problems, and they are not in a very good financial conditions. So naturally, the financial perspective becomes crucial at this point. So all your strategies will focus more towards the financial perspective and what is to be done in order to improve our financial performance much more. But in another environment, when financially you are quite good, quite strong, and now you probably may like to look at other perspective. Okay, so this particular tool, balance scorecard tool, provides you that tool in order to look at your organization from different perspective. I'm not saying maybe at some point of time financial perspective becomes the most crucial. It is most crucial because without money you can't survive. That is where I think it's a matter of survival. But then once you overcome that survival kind of a stage.
Yeah. So I have Two questions, sir. Thank you, sir. One
Yeah.
is like we had a P&L statements that tells about the financial status of the company. Now,
Yeah.
sir, is it like balance scorecard visibility is for whom? Is it like it is open for everyone to see the company's balance scorecard, or it is for the internal employees, or what is like the visibility pattern, sir?
Yeah, it is. It is actually balance scorecard. When you do the analysis, you share it with the people. Ultimately, you share
Okay.
it with employees, because unless employees know that, if employees do not know from the customer perspective what is important, then they will not be able to give that due attention to the customer metrics. Okay, they should know the internal business perspective also, business process perspective, in order to, for them to uh, get involved into the improvement strategies. Okay, so this is not just for the top hierarchy. It is, balance scorecard is of course developed, analyzed, and is done by the your one particular department. Maybe it's a corporate strategy department or the corporate planning department. But then ultimately, the analysis is shared and explained nicely to all the employees in the organization. If you want their involvement in improvement, and involvement of their involvement is definitely required.
Thank you, sir.
So,
So my question is, can it be viewed by other than the employees also, other than our company, some other people outside our to judge?
Lot of organization analysts, lot of assessment, those corporate assessors who are there, they, or let's say business analysts and all, they keep tracking of organization performance, not just by the financial performance. They also look at what is the customer are thinking, what is the brand, what is the, and like all of us, we know that some organizations have a lot of emphasis on internal business processes. And because whenever you want to study why this organization is doing so wonderfully well, you put your hands not only on the business financial results, you try to find out their brand is pretty good, their processes are very good, their employees are very good, their employees are so good, they are aware of this thing, they keep bringing the new technology and all. So this is useful not only for the within the organization, the employees, it's useful for even to your stakeholders to know. All the stakeholders should also know. So your customers should know that processes are very good.
Yeah, so that means they can easily have that balance scorecard for their own assessment.
They should be able to know balance scorecard results, and people outside, they also know what is your broad strategy, how you broad strategy. I'm not talking about your secrets, but your broad strategy people know. And it is also in your annual report. Annual report has got, if you examine any annual report of a company, you will find there is a discussion, business discussion, and a chapter, a particular paragraph on that, and where each company details what is the environment and what is their priorities, what is their importance, how their future is going to be, how they are trying to move into the future. So this broadly people know. So it is not a secret. If you know, if you read Reliance Industries annual report, you know which are Mukesh Ambani's concerns, which are the industry's concern, which he is tackling with, and so on and so forth. You will come.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Business strategy is a very interesting area, and I would encourage you that whichever organization you are attached with, that company's annual report you must be able to go through. And in the annual report, there is a particular chapter on director's report. And
Okay.
if you go through the director's report, you will know everything about, key things about the industry you're working in and what is your organization's key um, key areas which organization is.
Okay.
And ultimately, annual report also gives you the performance of the company. So you should be able to know. So out of this director's report, you must be able to understand what is the business strategy we are working in. And that understanding will help you in developing your functions strategy as well as your own, if you are heading the training function, so your own training strategy. And that's where I think each individual, each manager, each executive in the organization should know his company's business strategy and business environment, and so on. So, and that is all available in annual report. So succeeding annual report, previous years and this year's and all that, will also give you some indication of what are the trends which are happening in our industry and how we are operating and how we are taking care of those trends in our nation.
So it's only
This,
on the Google, so we can write the annual report of this company. Like, is it the way to access?
in fact, all the companies which are listed in a stock exchange, they are perforce supposed to download their annual reports in the Google. So you can always find it in the Google. However, those companies which are not listed, it is not easy to find the annual report because that may not be public document. May not. So you have to probably look at your organization's internet or something to get more idea about the business.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So any other question which you have? But then we will, this execution of strategy, business strategy or any strategy is a very important concept, and I will devote the next session almost entirely on that. Okay, so if any question is there, then I will be able to take up next time also. But any question on training strategy, I will be able to take right now also. Any questions? Okay, so if that is no question.
Sir, before we end, sir, how is the frequency of balance scorecard being made? Like, is it an annual thing or it is a quarterly or?
No, it is normally is annual, but not every organization is using this management tool, but all good organizations, professional organizations are using balance scorecard. This has become quite, I think you can Google and read about this because it's a very interesting concept which Norton and Kaplan have come out with of looking your organization from different perspectives. So it has become quite popular. It's pretty old now. Of course, newer things are coming now. People are looking at number of new perspective also, but then this is fairly management tool.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, all the best to you, and see you next time, next session, next Sunday. All the best.